This week's position preview. I can't even call this a BA breakdown because we're going to have a BA breakdown coming later in the show. But just going to start previewing the linebackers, kind of what I expect. In my opinion, this is a very loaded room. We did lose a lot of talent from me, like a few stars. I'll say this room, I don't think right now, sitting here in June, has any huge stars like our D line has, you know. I just don't. I think we lost two really good players. I don't think we have any bona fide stars right now. But I do think we got depth. Probably. We bring back some experience. We have 8 scholarship guys at sophomore or above. So there might be some movement positionally. I don't know. This group is coached by someone that I personally feel like is a fantastic coach. And I can tell you guys firsthand, can't like man to man here. Coach Rob Dvoracek is a fantastic guy. He's a knowledgeable coach. He makes time for high school football coaches. So I'll tell you guys, I met Coach Dvoracek about a year, right? It was shortly after they all got hired there. I met him at a coach's clinic in Kansas City. I got his phone number that night. We've talked back and forth a few times since then. I'll tell you, this man always makes time for you to talk, just talk ball. Makes time for us. I'm being like, hey, can we stop by? I'm recruiting the Kansas City area, whatever. He always makes time for us. I fully believe Rob Dvoracek will be a defensive coordinator in the next, I don't know, however many years. And I hope that happens in Lincoln. I don't know if he's next in line if Tony White leaves, but I do know he's on the short list of people being considered for that. And he would be a great pick for that. So maybe I'm biased, but I really like Coach Dvoracek because of how cool he's always been to me. But I do feel like this position group is coached by one of the best in the country. And I'm saying that as honestly as I can. I truly, in my heart, authentically believe that. So, something I think is our strengths at the linebacker position, I do think we do bring back a lot of experience. Um, we do have a lot of guys that are versatile and can play in a lot of different ways, which in our defensive scheme is honestly a really big deal. And I do think we have some really good tacklers. I can't even say it's a weakness, it's more of questions is who's going to step up and be the dude or the dudes, right? Losing the 2 stars we did last year, especially Reimer. Reimer ended number 3 all time in tackles at a storied program like Nebraska. That's a huge deal. Who's going to step up and be the dude this year? That's the biggest thing with this group is who is going to step up and be the dude. That's what I want to see from this group. So the reason the 3-3 stack linebackers are so important, we're going to go into a little bit of this more whenever we go on to the next segment, but the reason this position group is so important is just imagine like you're a quarterback or a center trying to set the protection and you have to figure out all these guys, they're moving constantly. They can come from all these different angles. Sometimes you know they're going to drop back into coverage. Sometimes you know they're going to be coming. You don't know which ones are coming. You can say that about any defense. When the 3-3 stack, especially if they're lined up in a true stack, you literally cannot. We'll get into this more later, but they can come from any different direction, especially if they're come from the 3-3 odd stack. You know who might be playing coverage, but this group is so hard to read in the 3-3 stack, and I can tell you coaching against it, if you have a versatile linebacker group, in the 3-3 stack, you have to be versatile to play in it. You just absolutely have to. You have to be able to make good run reads, fill a gap, make a tackle. You have to be good in coverage. Otherwise, you know that this guy isn't going to be good, especially if you're not playing the jack. For you that don't know, in the R3-3 stack, what we call a jack is more of a linebacker that we'll talk about him more, but we'll step up and sometimes get on the line of scrimmage, make an edge rush. Sometimes he'll go back into coverage, but he's more of our edge setter. Sometimes he'll have outside contain on that sort of things. Might even show blitz and then cover flats if you have a versatile enough guy for that. But yeah, it's just so important. So I think the key to this defense this year is going to be if these guys can step up and be some dudes. So who are some guys that I think can play in our linebacker position? I think MJ Sherman is going to have a really good year. I think he's going to. I think he could be a sneak pick for the All Big Ten guys. Honestly, I think he'll probably be playing Jack. I think he could be our starting Jack, and I think he could be an absolute dog, especially if we run the 4-man front that we transition to a lot of the second half of the year. So we started in the 3-3 stack quite a bit, and then at well, some point in the midway through the season, I can't remember the exact game, we started walking our Jack up a lot more. So we're running kind of a 4-2 shell in the box, and we could stay in our 3-3 personnel, which was great, but we also had that Jack lined up coming off the edge as a pass rusher. I think MJ Sherman could do really good in that role because then he could also, I think he's versatile enough where he could line up there, but he can still get out to cover flats in passing situations. I think he could be an absolute demon this year. I think he's a dog. He played in all 12 games last season, and I think he's going to take his statistically wasn't one of our best, but I think he could have a really big role this season. Some of the other starters I'm projecting is Javen Wright. I think he had 51 tackles last season. I think he's poised for a really big season. I think he could be a great starter in the Big Ten. He was one of our best tacklers last season, and I expect him to fill a big role coming in. Stephen Thompson is a newcomer that he came from Syracuse. So he actually played and started for Coach Tony White at Syracuse. So I think that's kind of a big deal. He got 10 and a half sacks in his career for the Orange over at Syracuse. I mean, he started a few years over there. I think he could be a really good pick. I don't know if he'll be the game one starter, but I think he's definitely, especially with our two guys, especially if we run that 4-2-5 look, our two inside linebacker guys. I think he'll be the third guy rotated in, if that makes sense. Stephen Thompson, I think he'll be the third. I think Javen Wright and John Bullock will start, and I think Stephen Thompson's going to get a crap ton of playing time, though. So that goes on to the next guy I think is going to start, is probably going to be John Bullock. He's probably our most experienced player at this position, right? He had 50 tackles last season, and overall, he's a great versatile player. Let's be real, that number 5, the single digits mean something in a Matt Rhule system. That's something I've admired about Coach Rhule since he's been at Temple. Something I kind of want to start with my players when I become a head coach one day is a whole single digit system. It really means something, and for him to have that number 5 last year is going to be, that's a big deal, and I expect him to be a single digit guy this year. So I think John Bullock's going to be a really good player for us as well. Some other guys I think will probably contribute for us is Gabert. I think he could potentially be a jack. He played in all 12 games. He had 3 sacks. I mean, guys, we have a lot of guys coming in with experience that even statistically they weren't great. We just had such good dudes there last year. I think they're going to contribute a lot more. Princewell, I think he's probably going to be a jack, maybe, or he honestly could go be an edge rusher on the D line. I did not have him in my defensive line preview. That's on me, but I think he's a guy that could play both, and I'm interested when I go up to fall camp in August, the first week of August. I'm interested to see where they have him lined up at, because I think that could be pretty telling on what they think. I think if they have him at D line, that means they're really comfortable with this linebacker group. But I think if they keep him in linebacker, that means they're going to probably play him there, if that makes sense. Just because we sub in and out so many guys on our defensive line that he could definitely still be a factor there. But I think if he's with that linebacker crew, that means he's getting time. Some new faces. I'm just going to talk about the biggest faces joining the linebacker room this year that are freshmen. Willis McGahee, the fourth. We got 2 Miami guys. 3-star from Miami. I think he's not gonna play a lot. I could be wrong. I don't think he's gonna play a ton this year. He seems more like a developmental guy. But he has all the tools to be an NFL guy. He runs an 11.34 in the 100 at 225 pounds. That is very fast, and especially at that size. I do think, obviously, with the big lineage with his dad, I think he could, with the physical traits he has, especially gets a little bit more weight on him, gets bigger, faster, stronger. I think maybe not this year. I think he could start playing a lot next year, but I think I don't know if they'll redshirt him this year. I kind of hope they do, just because I feel like his redshirt sophomore and junior season could be massive for him. I really do think he could be an NFL guy. Then the one I'm very excited about, this guy, Vincent Shavers Jr., he's the one I'm most excited about in last year's recruiting class. I'm excited about a lot of them from last year's recruiting class, but I already know Dylan Raiola is going to be really good. I really think Carter Nelson's going to be really good. I fully believe Vincent Shavers. I've been hearing from people that have seen this kid play I'm hearing this kid could be the next great Nebraska linebacker, and that means something at a storied place like Nebraska. We offered him in December, and 2 days later, he signed. He is all in. His dad's all in on Nebraska on Twitter and all that. All I hear is really great things about this kid, and I really do think he could be the next big thing. He also comes out of Miami. He seems all in on Nebraska, and hey, you're all in on Nebraska. We're all in on you. So, kind of like I said, overall, I feel really good with this position. I do expect a little bit of a drop off early just because of how many good players we're replacing at linebacker. But I do think by the end of the season, especially with our scheme, and we're about to get into that, with the scheme changes that we're going to make, I expect big things out of this group. By the end of the season, I think they're going to be one of the best linebacking cores in the country. And I mean that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of why I think about the linebackers. And like I said, we're going into quarterbacks next week and talking about the stars that everyone wants to talk about.